Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to the weekly trade report video for January 29th, 2017. So, first up, guys, let's just take a look at the Dow Jones, and we've finally broken through that 20,000 level on the Dow, right? So you've seen that all over the headlines and the social media and so forth. So that critical level there of Dow 20,000 has been broken, which is good. The only negative I could see with regards to Dow 20,000 is everybody that's not in the market, including many people I know, are talking about the market. So whenever the general, the retail, and people that aren't traders and so forth start talking about the stock market, it can be a sign that it's getting kind of top heavy. So, but at this point, I'm not seeing anything technically that would be of any concern, but just thinking about that as kind of a lot of euphoria, kind of from a contrarian standpoint, could be an indicator. But anyway, so we finally got through the Dow 20,000 level, and you can see that here on the DIA, the Dow Jones Industrial ETF here. So technically that's a breakout, that's bullish. So at this point it looks good. Let's take a look at SPY, similar thing, right? You know, this nice consolidation here. Kind of, you can see the 50-day moving average as it gets closer and closer. You can see, and then it finally broke out. So just an observation with oftentimes these 50-day moving averages as they rise, both in stocks and indexes, it can often act as they converge towards price. It often acts as a spot to where that stock or that market will rally off that level. But so the SPY looks really good, just like the Dow. Let's see, IWM, Russell 2000. So kind of a similar thing here. Still hasn't cleared its technical level there at around 138, but you can see the 50-day where it's acted as support, and it looks like it's probably going to rally and break out like the Dow and the S&P. So that's the IWM, this Russell 2000. IBB, not really seeing too much on the IBB. There's a couple biotech stocks that we'll look at today that look pretty good, but the overall index of IBB, not really seeing too much here on the IBB. Basically, it's pulled back into kind of a support area, I guess, but technically it's still kind of range bound, and just not seeing anything real clear there. So no real thoughts on the IBB at this point. Financial sector, seeing a lot of banks breaking out. Kind of a similar thing here. Look at this XLF chart here, this sideways consolidation, and then just bounce right off this rising 50-day, and it's right on the verge of making new highs. So the financial sector looks strong. A lot of the banks are nearing breakout points. Some of them have already broken out. So the XLF looks good. XLE Energy has yet to kind of turn up after this extended downtrend here. As you can see here, it's putting in these lower highs and lower lows kind of in this range like this. See that little downtrend range there? So I would need this thing to, it's right in this support area though around the 50-day. So we'll see if it can rally and break out through this upper trend line. That would be a sign. It would also be kind of a higher low right in here. So we'll see if the XLE, the energy sector, can turn up next week. All right, so I think that's all for the index and sector ETFs. So let's get into last week's trade ideas. We'll talk about some of the trades I made, and then at the end of the week, I closed out all my positions because, just really quick, I want to talk about Mosaic was a position that I had, and I just want to talk about this one real quick, where I had this great breakout through basically right in here, and I caught that. I bought this stock at 31.50 on the close on 123, and then I had this massive run. So I did really, really well with it, and I didn't sell all my position. I had like a half a position left, and then it pulled back here, and I thought, well, this thing's going to find support here as like a breakout pullback setup. And so I held a position, and I actually added some down here thinking this thing was going to rally. I think it was like 31.90 I added. And so, you know, on Friday, this thing, I thought it was going to go, and it didn't. And so I could tell that I was kind of getting emotional about the position, and I was like, I could just feel myself getting emotional. And so what I do when I'm not really in control is I just like to close out my positions. So that's one thing that it kind of helps me get back to an even keel, and I can always buy back, right? I can always re-enter positions. I can find there's always another trade, there's always another setup. So even the positions that looked good to me and that are still, I think, going higher, that we'll talk about today, I may re-enter, possibly re-enter those next week. But what I found, what helps me is just close out my positions and just kind of get my emotions back in control, and then start fresh the new week. So just to give you an idea, this was one trade that worked out, and I still like this setup. It basically looks like it's going to find support right in this area because it does have this support area around 31.50, and then also kind of a trend line. See that there? So I think it's in an area of support, and I'll keep watching, and I can always rebuy it next week. But so just give you some thoughts there on the close of the week. But I had some great trades earlier in the week. We'll talk about those too. So there's first up, the Mosaic trade on Friday. Okay, so let's look at EAPH here. So EAPH is just this really strong marijuana stock. So this thing I've traded several times, and I had this breakout through basically right in here that I caught. Okay, I traded it there, and I think I took some off here before, right at the peak, and then I watched it again on this breakout through 3, and I traded it again, and I sold it at 4, and it pulled back like I thought, and then it just broke out again through 4. So I didn't catch this breakout through 4, but it was, it was a nice breakout through 4 cents, and this thing just keeps stair-stepping higher, this EAPH. So at this point, I can't re-enter until I get some type of either a pullback or reaction, something that gives me a nice risk-reward. But just to kind of show you, this EAPH has been really strong, as well as a few other ones like CBIS and so forth. So we'll talk about some of those other marijuana plays later on. But anyway, this one's been a nice trader. I've done pretty good with it, made some good money with it, and I'll continue to watch it for trades next week. Let's see here. So UEC, this was a nice setup here on last week. I didn't actually trade it. I opted to trade another one which didn't actually move as good as this one. But this one had a nice pattern, and I thought this one was going to move. Here was kind of the pattern leading up into it, kind of like this. And it did find support right in here and rallied nicely, and then it just kind of gave it all back, right? So that's kind of frustrating if you're sitting in the position. So that's one thing that I'm working more diligently on, is taking profits, right? So holding longer positions, but also locking in some gains in case this type of stuff happens. But this had a nice run, and then now it's pulling back. So I do think these uranium plays could be setting up again for another move. I don't think they're finished yet. The longer term charts still look pretty good, but at this point at UEC, I don't see a trade. Maybe if it stabilizes and perks back up near this, say 175 area, 180, somewhere in there. If it perks back up, it put in a higher low and basically create like an ascending triangle type pattern, then maybe I'd maybe consider entering it. But I am still watching these uranium plays. Let's see, Phelp. So Phelp, this one, I don't think I traded this one last week, but it's on my radar. It's just very thin. It's not really moving, so I'll continue to watch this one for 750, 760. But at this point, I don't see anything. So yeah, Phelp is just it's still just kind of in a range here. So nothing actionable right now. So there's Phelp. Probably won't put it on my watch list unless it gets through near 750, 760, somewhere in there. Then I might put it on the watch list for next week if it actually moves up there. Let's see, ORBK, this one had a nice setup. Didn't trade it though. here's the range here, and it had this spot. I think this was on our watch list Monday, or yeah. So and then it just once it broke through that 34.30 area, you nice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days up. So if you were to trade this, you could use this basically the depth of this pattern as your first target. So take the 32.20, 34.30. So about $2 profit. So that would give you 34, 35, 36, 30. So that would have given you a nice profit there. You would have taken profits, at least partial ones, on the move of this range here, about $2. So that's just one that worked out well, and I didn't trade it, but it was a nice setup. CVSI, another marijuana play that I still like this one, and I'm still looking to enter this one on this breakout. This was one I actually had on Friday that I closed out because of closed everything out, but this one, still looking at this spot here around 57. See this pattern here where it broke out range bound and then broke out again. This is what it looks like here. It looks like it's kind of in this range here between the clean break is high 58, 80, somewhere in there, but 57 looks like the kind of an important level there. So we'll see if this one can actually get through, but I still like this CVSI for higher prices next week. ACOL, wow. Yeah, so this one, just to kind of give you kind of how I traded this one. This was, let's see, basically on this little flag break here through right in here, I caught this one, this big update here, and then I closed the position. I think I closed it either the close of this day or the next day, but I didn't catch this nice run here. But this is just, it's a marijuana play, but man, it's just been really strong. So maybe it's been beneficial to kind of hold a partial position, but that's okay. It just could have easily just have consolidated and pulled back like some of the other ones. But so this was a nice play. It's ACOL. It's it's just quite a mover now. It's moved up quite a bit. So I don't see any trade right now on this one. Maybe if it sets up again, I'll look at it. VIAV. This one had a nice pattern here, and I believe I posted this on Monday. But here's kind of this pattern here with a breakout of this range, and then so it got a little bit extended and then pulled back. So this one actually looks like it may be setting up for new highs next week as well. So VIAV, it had a little reaction here, and then now it's starting to turn back up. So this chart is still very strong, and it also had a lot of call option activity on Friday as well. So keep that in mind. A lot of call buying. So VIAV, strong chart. It, just keep an eye on it. It could be a nice trader next week if it breaks out. ATW, an oil play. I was watching this one for a breakout, never actually got there. So basically, right in this area here, like 1450, is where I'm looking at. So no actionable trade right now until it actually gets up there. But you can see here this rising 50-day. So as this gets closer and closer to price, so maybe this thing consolidates for, I don't know, another week, a few days, and sets up again. But this is a bullish sideways consolidation pattern. So it just needs to consolidate more, and I do think eventually this one's going to go higher. But at this point, no trade at this point. So ACAN, this is another marijuana play. Another one I didn't catch, although I did alert it. It just I didn't pull the trigger when I probably should have. But you can see that this was kind of the pattern leading into this breakout day. I seen this was kind of a bull flag, right? So it kind of consolidated sideways, and I could see the volume coming in on this day, and I could see it moving through the spot. I just didn't. I don't know. I just didn't pull the trigger on it. So. But yeah, nice breakout. Actually had a pullback there to the breakout level, which could have been viable as a breakout kind of pullback setup. But once again, at this point, I don't see anything with ACAN. I don't have to set up some some type of flag pattern or something for me to get a good risk reward on it. So, but there's ACAN. POTN, this is one I did trade, and the pattern leading into this was basically, so I had the big breakout here, and then 2 red days, and then this big green day right here caught my attention, and it looked like it was going to break out this recent high, and sure enough it did. It actually broke out, rallied up to here. So this was a 1-day trade for me. I bought it, and then closed it out at the highs here, and the next day it kind of, gave it all back, but it's still kind of finding support in this area. So to me, this one actually may be a decent trader if it could actually ramp up through this kind of upper limit here through 0.016, somewhere in there. So as long as it kind of stays in this range, if it perks up through there, then maybe I would trade it. So POTN, I'll keep that one on my radar and see if it can get back to that 0.016 level for a trade. UUU, this is another uranium play. So take a look at this chart here. You can see where this thing has a habit of having this big run up and then kind of a down trend and then ramps up to new highs, kind of a sideways pullback, ramps up to new highs. So at this point I don't see anything, but I'm watching these uranium plays because I don't think that they're done yet. I think they could be setting up on these pullbacks, stabilize, and potentially perk back up. So, I'll watch all the uranium plays, UEC, UUU, URE. This was another one that I traded, and I closed it out for a small loss. It just wasn't doing. I believe it was on one of these days back here last week, but it didn't follow through, and I had to close it. And it just kind of rolled over, and I was using this line here as my risk, and sure enough it just wasn't acting right, so I went ahead and closed it out. But so who knows, maybe the uraniums will set up again, but at this point I'm not in any of them, but I will be watching them. Okay, let's see, next up, AQXP. This one looks really, really good for this week, guys. AQXP, it's a biotech, and it's got this nice kind of ascending triangle here. And so this one had this, we kind of go back a little bit on the chart here. So this was the original breakout pattern here, kind of a cup and handle through this spot right here, right? So this was a couple things you can see on here. This is a cup and handle pattern. So you had a big run up, pull back, and then rally back to the high, and then kind of a sideways thing. That's a cup and handle, okay? And so as it breaks out of that handle, there's your trigger. And so this one broke out, and then it pulled all the way back to the support level where it found support, and then rallied back up. So you see that a lot, guys, the breakout pullback. You'll see these big breakouts, and then they pull all the way back to their breakout point, and then they rally up again. So keep that in mind. If you miss these breakouts, oftentimes these things will pull back to the spot where they broke out, and it gives you another entry point and a good risk level to risk off of. So anyway, this is showing this chart, but take a look at this one. Now the high back here on this breakout was put in right around this, see, 1840, somewhere in there. And then so ever since then it's just been grinding higher back up near that spot. So I would watch this one next week. It has some pretty good volume on Friday, and I think this one another thing too about this chart is volatility contraction. So that just means the range is getting tighter and tighter. See how it gets tighter and tighter, and the volatility contracts and gets lower and lower. So this one would be one to watch next week for a push and a breakout through this range here. So really be watching closely this AQXP for an entry next week. Let's see, LXRP. So LXRP is a weed play. And this one had a big run up, had a pullback, and then now it rallied back up to near these recent highs. So I really like this chart, and so if this one can get through say 63, 64 area, somewhere in there, I'll probably enter this one next week. I'll be looking for some volume coming in, but it's a nice looking chart. It looks like it's ready to break out. So I'll be watching this one closely. It's a nice looking. I think it's a biotech weed. So it's an OTC. You know, basically all the weed plays are OTC, but this one looks good for next week. Next up is FCX. So this is a big cap company, Freeport-McMoRan, but it's a copper mining company. And so this one has a spot right around, it had a breakout through basically this 16 area, somewhere in here. So obviously this spot here was a little bit higher than 16, but right in here was resistance, 16. So 16 looks like a key pivot point for this FCX. And so it broke out, and then now it's pulling back towards, basically close this little gap here and kind of finding support, kind of this trend line here, and also right around 16. But the reason why I like this one is a couple reasons. The pattern is there, but also I wanted to show you guys really quick kind of the chart. I don't really trade futures, but copper futures. So the symbol for copper is HG, and then G is the front month, so I think February, and then 7 is 7/2017. So if you pull up a chart of that, it'll give you the February 2007 copper. And so when I'm looking at stocks like gold miners or copper miners, I like to look at the underlying commodity and see kind of what it's doing, because oftentimes these things will follow their underlying commodity price, right? So if you look at this copper price, you can kind of see where copper had this big run up to around 270, and then tapped it a couple times here, pulled back, 50-day, right? And then tapped it again, pulled back higher low, tapped it again. So it keeps tapping this 270 level. And so I think copper, the commodity, is actually going to break through the 270 level and make some new highs. And you know, so the copper underlying commodity looks really, really good. So, and you can kind of see where the copper chart looks a lot like. So kind of look at this chart here and then look at, you know, FCX, and you can see where it resembles it very much. So, and then, so I really like this FCX, and I'd be looking to enter this one next week too. I'm not sure what price yet, but I'm going to be watching this one for an entry, especially if copper tries to break that 270 level next week. So also, similar to FCX is HBM. So HBM is also a copper mining company, and this is one that I traded successfully last week, and I made I think it was 13% in 2 days. So I did sell this one before Friday, but so here's the resistance level, and you can see where that spot there, 725, basically was resistance here and here, and then put in this higher low, and then as it broke through this, I pulled the trigger on this morning, held it 2 days, and closed it. Just happened to catch the high of the day at 820, so that was like a 13% gain in 2 days. So, you know, that's pretty good. And then the next day it kind of pulled back, but it's still, this one still looks good. It still actually looks good. So it looks to me like it's consolidating. I actually poked through, hit 825 on Friday, but this one looks like it's just creating a little flag pattern here. So this one may be something I re-enter next week, especially if copper makes new high. So I'm just thinking about copper. This one looks good. Hudson Bay Minerals, HBM, one to watch as well for next week. All right, next up is SUM, S-U-M. Another successful trade that I made with SUM. So this one had this breakout, this range bound, and then notice here, once again, 50-day moving average, right? So as it gets to the 50-day, finds support, and then this big green day here is what caught my attention. This is a general building materials. Maybe they're rallying because Trump's you know, building the wall or whatever. I don't know why, but the pattern was there, and the spot was right around this 25. So I actually got in on the following day. So I got in right in here around 25.40, okay, and then it rallied up, and the next day it kind of traded sideways. So had a few percent profit on this trade, and like I said, I closed out all my positions on Friday because of the Mosaic trade that was kind of getting me kind of emotional about it, not really moving the way I wanted it to. But this one still looks good, so maybe I re-enter this one next week. But it looks to me like it's just resting for a couple of days after this breakout, and it could continue higher. So that's some. And also in the same sector as that one is AAON, which is one I didn't trade, but basically the identical pattern here. It's you know, here was a breakout day on this day, and then this one actually looks maybe even better than. So this one, you know, this one had 3 green days it's had since this breakout. So, you know, here's the high. Of this day here, and then it's just kind of grinding higher towards that high. So this one actually looks higher too, AAON, for the general building material sector. So those two still look good for next week. ENTG, this is a semiconductor company, and the semiconductors also have been strong. This one's not a big mover, but technically it looks like it's trying to break out of this range here, maybe basically around 19. You kind of see that's where kind of the resistance was on here and here, here, and it actually broke it. It's just kind of sitting right around that 19 spot. So, you know, if I had to guess what this one would do, I would say this one's probably going to hang around 19, right above it, and then eventually move higher. So it is a technical breakout, just a slow mover. But that's ENTG. TRQ, this one I also believe is a copper mining company, but if we look at, let's see, a longer term chart of this one. See, this one's got some resistance up here. Basically, see that right there? So right up here around 368 was a high back here, tested it here, tested it again, and then so now it's kind of pulled back from that level, but it's the chart looks good. I think this one could be one to watch for next week, and to kind of watch. You know, it's pulling back, but maybe it puts in a higher low here, and then rallies back up, and that'd be an area to watch. TRQ. So keep that one on your radar. Let's see, OCLR. It's another. I believe this is another semiconductor stock. So the key pivot on this one is right around $10, right? So the high back here, the high back here, it's right around there right now. Let's see, look at a longer term chart on this one. So yeah, basically on this day here was where it got my attention. It closed right at 10. I thought this one was going to break, and it did, but now it's just kind of sideways above 10. But it actually, this one could actually, you know, put in a few red days and then rally back up. So this one actually still looks good. OCLR, semiconductor sector remains strong, and so I think this one could be one to watch for next week as well. OCLR. Let's see, Cinta. So Cinta is a fertilizer stock. They kind of sell like fertilizers and stuff like that. Kind of like Mosaic and IPI and something like that. Some of those other fertilizer plays, but this one has a nice spot. It's kind of consolidating. Let me see here. Right around this spot at 32, 26, 32, 36, I guess. But right around 32, right? So here it got rejected, failed breakout, pull back, and then so now it's back up there. Not a big mover, but it's, you know, this is just looks like it wants to break out and make new highs. So Cinta, probably one I won't trade, but it has a nice pattern. So ESV. ESV is an oil play, and I really like this one for next week. It looks like it's setting up for a breakout. Let's take a look at the longer term chart. So we can see here that this kind of $12 level right here It's kind of resistance. Well, here it went a little bit higher, but right here it was important, and it pulled all the way back, and then tested 12, put in this low here, rallied back to 12, and it keeps putting in higher lows, kind of an ascending triangle pattern. So if we look at kind of a 90-day, so we got the spot here, right there at $12, and then you can kind of draw a line across these lows like this. So it looks like a nice ascending triangle forming. So what we're looking for is this one to kind of put in, you know, this was a higher low, and then maybe that puts in another higher low off this trend line here. That'd be ideal, and then rally back towards 12. And so that would be 1, 2, 3, and usually the fourth or fifth time is a charm when it comes to these ascending triangles. So I'll be watching this one. ESV oil play looks good, but it needs to get back to 12 before I'll take a position. So that's what we're looking for, is a 12 breakout. PTLA, this is another biotech that's basically putting in a range-bound flag type pattern here. So the clean is up here. You know, basically up here at 2650 area, but the real important level looks to be right in here, like 2570, somewhere in there. But this is one I'll be watching. We'll see here. It's getting, once again, like AQXP. It's getting this, hold on a minute, let's see, 50 day. Okay, so it's getting this kind of range, tight range coiling pattern here. So I'll be watching this one for maybe a breakout through, with some volume, perking up through, say, 26 area. Might trigger me to take a position in it. But so anyway, one to watch, PTLA. LGCY, this one still looks pretty good to me. Let's see here. So the important level that I could see on this chart was right around 260. Okay, that's kind of the important level looking at this chart here. So you can see we're right in there. I mean, the wicks went higher, but the chart pattern kind of still remains intact here with this LGCY. It's kind of volatile though, very spiky kind of action here. But you can see where it pulled back, rallied to 260, pulled 260, and then finally had some big volume, rallied and broke, and then Friday kind of gave some back. But it's still right around that 260 spot. So this chart still looks pretty good. It just moves a lot. So you gotta kind of have to. It's kind of volatile, but you know, if this one can perk back up and push through 270 area, maybe I'll take a position in it. But if we look at kind of a longer term, let's see, 1 year. So yeah, so now it looks like 270 is kind of a key spot. So we'll keep watching it. It's a pretty good looking chart still though, oil play. AERI, this one looks really, really good for next week. So ever since this big run up here, it's had this resistance right around this 42 spot. I mean, this one went a little bit further through there. Let's see. Right, so this one you can see where basically right around 42 area was resistance here, right in here, 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 and then finally it broke through that area and closed at the high through all of this range. So this one is actually a breakout, and it's still early. So this one, I think you can get long with this one, and a potential target would be, using the depth of this pattern, would be right around 36 to the high here. Let's just call it you know, 42. So this one, the target would be, you know, 36 to 42. So that's 6 points. You add that on to 42, and that gives you 48. So this one, I think could potentially go to 48. This one's been consolidating for quite a while, so the fact that it's breaking out of this range is very bullish. So AERI looks really good. That's another one I may take a position in next week as well. DNN, this is another uranium play. I think it's a uranium play. Maybe it's yeah, I'm pretty sure it's uranium. But looking for on this chart, similar to the other ones, is here's a resistance right around 80 cents, and can this thing put in a higher low right in here, right, and create basically an ascending triangle type pattern. So if this one get back near 80 and try to break out, then I would look at this one for an entry. But at this point, no entry until it gets back to the 80 cent level. So IPI, this one, I've traded this one in the past, and I've made some money, but I've also had to close out a position when it failed, basically right in here to hold this $2 level. I cut my position, and then it just rallied back up. But what I'm looking for on this chart is a couple of things. So it kind of looks like it's in this channel. So there's the upper channel, and then this would be kind of the bottom. You see this channel? So it's in this range here, this channel. So what I'm looking for on this chart for an entry would be basically on this pullback that it can rally back up and break out through this recent high here. So if this one can break out and after this pullback through this trend line, then it would spark my attention here. So it actually found support at the 50-day, which is good. But you can see here where, here's a low. This is kind of slightly lower. Here's a lower low. So it has yet to start putting in the transition from lower highs and lower lows to higher highs and higher lows. So looking for this, if it can find stabilize here, put in a higher low, and then potentially break out, this one would be one to watch, IPI. And then finally, GBLX is another one that I seen moving, but I didn't pull the trigger here. But it's a marijuana play. And this one kind of flatlined down here, so right around this 36 level. I seen the volume coming in, and for whatever reason I just didn't pull the trigger. So see the big volume spike right here on Thursday, and then it broke out, and then actually the next day pulled all the way back to that spot, and then it rallied all the way back up. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Whenever you see these big breakouts, the next day, if you get these flushes down to the breakout spot, it just gives you a good risk reward. You can go long, and then, oftentimes they'll rally back up near their highs, but it does give you a nice risk reward level. So GBLX, one to watch for maybe some consolidation, some pullback, and some continuation higher. And then last, just take a look at CBIS, which was basically a great trade for us, and just kind of wanted to look at a couple things here on this chart. So this one had the great breakout. Caught a big piece of this when this broke. I didn't catch all of it, but just a huge move. And then it just fell back, right? So there's the importance of locking in gains after 2 or 3 days of moves, because then you get these pullbacks. But one thing to look at here is take a look at that as it pulled back. The breakout pullback setup. I totally missed it, but I was thinking about it, and I didn't do it either. So anyway, take a look at this chart. Had the big breakout, and then 2 red days pulled it all the way back to this important level. Look at that, right around 7. Let's see, the low was like 7.5 cents, right? So it didn't actually go all the way back to 7, but it went all the way back, very, very close to 7.5 cents, and then rallied all the way back to 12. So this would have been a huge move. Even if you were to buy this dip here, put your risk at 7, and then sell it after it closes today, on this day after moving all the way to 10 cents, that would have been a huge percent gain. So once again, another breakout pullback setup where you're using these important resistance and support levels. Once these support level or these resistance levels are broken, you get a pullback there. It's often a key support, and it bounces. So it's a great example of how old resistance becomes new support, and vice versa. So, but CBIS, it looks like it failed to break 12 cents, which was basically an important level right in here. And so now I'm thinking that it's probably going to pull back even more and consolidate before breaking 12 because this one's already had such a huge run. It probably needs some rest time. So no trade yet on Cebus, but we'll continue to watch. All right, guys. So that's all I got for today. Hope you guys had a good week last week. And if you guys have any questions for me, just shoot me an email or write me on social media. If you have any charts you want me to look at, anything like that, just ask, and I can do that for you. But hope you guys have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, guys.